Gog and Magog are one of the most curious concepts in the history of religions. They are a ruthless community imprisoned behind an impenetrable barrier because of the corruption and massacre they committed in their time. No one knows what they are, who they are, or their purposes. But there is only one thing pointed out by all religious books. They will be freed before the last days come. The fact that they will continue to destroy all civilizations as we know them. And when all this starts to happen, a great war will start again, with a powerful force coming from the skies. So, what kind of truths lie behind the story of Gog and Magog and al-Qarnayn, who has the power to imprison them? Is all this just a dream or an ancient story? Do myths give us a serious warning? Let's go back in time, step by step, and find the facts together. The Quran, this book that millions of people accept as sacred, tells us about an interesting encounter that took place in ancient times. Al-Qarnayn appears before us as a strong and mighty king, and his travels are told to us. In the stories, al-Qarnayn went to the west. When he reached the place where the sun sets, he found it in a dark, muddy spring. According to the symbolism, this describes the Western civilizations where the sun sets. Right next to this point, an oppressed tribe asks al-Qarnayn for help. They say that Gog and Magog are causing mischief on the earth. If we pay you a wage, would you build a barrier between us and them? al-Qarnayn said, "The blessing that my Lord has given me is better. Help me with your strength, and I will build a solid barrier between you and them." When the work of imprisoning Gog and Magog with the metal barrier he built between two mountains is completed, he returns to the city he helped, informs them about the day of judgment, and warns them, continues on his way in the opposite direction, to the east, to the lands where the sun rises. Again, according to the narration in Surah al-Anbiya in the Quran, one day in the future, which mostly describes the period just before the apocalypse, this barrier will be destroyed with the permission of God, and Gog and Magog will spread all over the world. That's basically the narrative in the Quran. But of course, the Hadith writers, with the information they received from Israelite sources, tell the story a little bit more to their liking. Gog and Magog are further changed and eventually detailed in some tafsir and sources by combining the narration with other seemingly related surahs as follows. After the collapse of the wall by the order of God, Gog and Magog spread around the world and catch the infidels in a tight grip, making these people taste the wrath of God. The interesting thing here is that the Gog and Magog tribe mentioned is a tribe under the control of God. Why does al-Qarnayn feel the need to imprison them? Let's continue the story with other religious books. In the book of Revelation of the New Testament, Gog and Magog are described to us as follows. At the end of the kingdom, that have lasted for 1,000 years, the devil will be released, and the nations called Gog and Magog from all over the world will gather and surround the holy city. This siege ends with God sending fire and destroying the devil, Gog and Magog and their followers. It is a revelation that the God will be, and evil will eventually be defeated by good. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. In number, they are like the sand on the seashore. They marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, the city he loves. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them. Here, Gog and Magog appear before us, not as a tribe or a single evil entity, but on the contrary, as nations that the devil will deceive and make fight for him on the evil path. Moreover, in the 39th chapter of the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel prophesied that Gog, the leader of Magog's nation, would personally make a great attack on Israel. When we combine the Bible and the Torah, we find this narrative in more detail, especially in chapters 38 and 39 of the book of Ezekiel. Here, Gog is mentioned as the leader of Magog, and his people are the descendants of Japheth, the son of the prophet Noah, and are described as the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, according to Ezekiel. Gog is also depicted as a figure sent to attack the land of Israel with a great coalition force. These chapters describe this great war against Israel and the fight of God against Gog and his armies. God has promised to destroy Gog's army and thus protect his people. This story carries a message that emphasizes God's faithfulness to the people of Israel and that he will protect them from all evil. The Lord Jehovah says, "Son of man, set your face toward Gog, of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him and say, Thus says the Lord Jehovah, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you out, and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed in full armor, a great host, all of them with buckler and shield, wielding swords. Persia, Cush, and Put are with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his hordes, Beth Togarmah from the uttermost parts of the north with all his hordes. Many peoples are with you. Be ready and keep ready, you and all your hosts that are assembled about you, and be a guard for them. After many days you will be mustered. In the latter years you will go against the land that is restored from war, the land whose people were gathered from many peoples upon the mountains of Israel, which had been a continual waste. Its people were brought out from the peoples, and now dwell securely, all of them. You will advance, coming on like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land, you and all your hordes, and many peoples with you. When we analyze these verses, it is written once again that these nations will attack Israel by the command of the Lord God, and will be destroyed by him again. Now, the logical error in these so-called holy books appears here once again. If God is going to defeat Gog, why would he prepare the man and give the order to attack? And again, if God wants Israel to be victorious, then so be it. Why is he talking about how to fight like humans and attack them? Why would the being who created the entire universe argue with a wretched king in the book that he supposedly sent? Even though all three books state that they came from the skies, even though they all claim it. As I told you before, in my opinion, the main backbone may be celestial, but most of the side branches are written by human hands. Otherwise, it would not be such a bad narrative. For years, both Jews, Christians, and Muslims have been talking about Gog and Magog because of this narrative. They associated Gog and Magog with the hostile communities of that day in the north, using the shallow information written in their own books. For example, the Jews associated Gog and Magog with the Scythians and Turks in the Torah period, and the Christians once again associated Gog and Magog with the Turks and Mongols in the Middle Ages. Later, Muslim Arabs also associated Gog and Magog with the Turks due to Israelite sources. But later, since the Turks became Muslims, this view was updated again to identify Gog and Magog as the Russians and Chinese. In short, I think now you understand the religious approach to the subject. At that time, the strong enemy in the north was Gog and Magog, because ultimately, no one knew what this race was or what it looked like. There is a strong symbolic meaning at play, so when you ask any Muslim, Christian, or Jew today, we see that they do not tell you Gog and Magog is a nation today, but rather they say symbolically that evil will spread, and we will fight with the good ones, the forces of God, when the time comes. But these things do not tell you everything. It takes an event to change the situation. And tomorrow, any nation whose relations with Israel become broken can be declared as Gog and Magog. After all, isn't it the most common method to use religious myths to motivate people to go to war when the time comes? When we examine history outside of religions, the historian Josephus, who lived in the 1st century AD, wrote in his works that Gog was a great king. And it is written that he fought with the Magog and where and how he imprisoned them. Even later, Ibn Khaldun also shared this information with us in his own manuscripts. Well, since they wrote everything, someone must have done it. If there are those of you who wonder who these kings are, I'm sure you have all heard the name I will give. Alexander the Great. In line with his great expedition, he spread to the east, fighting against the Persian Empire, the superpower of the period, and eventually, at the end of this journey, he captured Anatolian lands, Persian lands, Egyptian lands, and even the northern regions of India, erasing the Persians from the stage of history. However, one place in this journey attracts attention: the famous Dariel Pass. These passages served as a gate connecting the Silk Road starting from Asia with the Mediterranean at that time, and were of great importance. The historian Josephus wrote that Alexander fought against Gog and Magog in this region and prevented them from invading the world. He even said that Alexander built a wall. Actually, this is not a lie. Alexander really conquered the region, but there is a situation where history and exaggerated mythology are intertwined. It is not known exactly who Alexander fought in these passages at that time. It is not even officially known whether he built a wall. Yes, there is a wall in the passages. Its remains were found. Even the remains of metal buildings were found. But it is a wrong approach to attribute this directly to Alexander. Because what Alexander did was to prevent his newly founded empire from being weakened by raids from the northeast, and to take control of this commercial passage connecting Asia to the Mediterranean. Also, do not forget that Alexander gained his fame with his exaggerated religious motifs. For example, when he set out for Macedonia, he declared himself the son of Zeus. When he conquered Egypt, he introduced himself as a pharaoh, as the son of Ammon. When he overthrew the Persians, he took this deification approach to its peak. The man is intelligent. He knows the weak point of the people of that period. He introduces himself as a great commander, a demigod king who guides mortals. Of course, this approach influenced the historians and clerics who came after him and caused the Jewish historian Josephus to combine the information in the Torah with Alexander in the 1st century AD. Later, the Muslim historian Ibn Khaldun remained under this influence and associated al-Qarnayn, mentioned in the Quran, with Alexander. There is neither Gog nor Magog. There is only the fact that an intelligent commander wrote his own glorious history by directing people's beliefs. Afterward, it was up to the historians and writers of the time to exaggerate the work and fill in the gaps. Well, there is no smoke without fire. This event is persistently mentioned in the books of Abrahamic religions and associated with the coming apocalypse. For those of you who say that it is a little more detailed than the ancient Mesopotamian stories, we will now make a big jump in time because this story of Gog and Magog was told by someone thousands of years before it took its place in religious books. When we examine the ancient pages of history all over the world, we come across the concept of the difference between good and evil and their sides, just like religions talk about. Great wars and struggles occur. One of the oldest of these is the story of Gugulana and Magan. Note how similar the words Gog and Magog are. It has an important place in ancient Mesopotamian civilizations, such as Sumer and Akkad. The main subject of this story is as follows. Gugulana, a great warrior who is called the Big Bull in Mesopotamian mythology, is the husband of the goddess Eresh-Kigal. This great warrior is one of the fiercest rivals that the goddess Inanna encountered in her descent to the land of the dead. Magan is a trade region known as the source of precious metals and other commercial goods during the Sumerian and Akkadian periods, and is thought to be located around today's Oman and Bahrain. Well, we have a warrior called the Big Bull in a region that trades metals. If you ask what this has to do with al-Qarnayn and Gog and Magog, the story comes together as follows. By the way, do not forget that the word al-Qarnayn means two-horned. The story starts with Gugulana being sent to Earth by Inanna, whose name will later form the root of the Arabic word Shams, which means sun. However, over time, Gugulana degenerates and begins to oppress people. Then the gods send a hero to stop him, and the hero defeats Gugulana, allowing peace and order to begin on Earth again. Look at that. A place where metals are traded. An evil character with horns is killed by a hero. The world finds order. Horns, hero, and metal. Keep these in mind because these three basic concepts appear here for the first time. A more detailed and very similar version of this story appears once again in the Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamian civilizations. Our heroes, the great Gilgamesh and his warrior friend Enkidu, fight with the Bull of Heaven that Inanna unleashed on them and defeat him, thus saving their city from absolute destruction. The most distinctive feature of Enkidu is that he is depicted as a warrior with horns, that is, a warrior with two horns. I remind you again that the word al-Qarnayn means two-horned. Don't forget that. With the emergence of the Torah, there appears al-Qarnayn, which I mentioned in the first part of the video, and his struggle with Gog and Magog, who symbolize evil, takes place. And the main theme and motifs of that story are the same. The mighty king warrior with two horns. al-Qarnayn goes to a city in need of help, and with their help, he imprisons a group of people representing evil behind a wall reinforced with metal. Well, religious books are involved in a great deal of destruction. Why did they add the figures of a raid that turned civilizations upside down before the apocalypse? Heroes fighting these forces. We are about to experience a moment of truth, because I will show you the connection that I have not come across in any other source. This connection will provide a serious theoretical answer to the question of how the Torah and the religious books that came after it relate Gog and Magog to great destruction. Because the destruction of Gog and Magog, which is mentioned in the books and is to come, actually seems to be based on a real event that happened in the past rather than the future. The destruction caused by the Sea Peoples, which is one of the most mysterious events in history, is the most important part of the video. This is exactly the point. I explained it by first giving examples from periods closer to the present, and then from periods farther from today, because this is the middle place where the 2 points connect. One of the greatest destructions in the history of humanity, in the 13th century BC, was carried out by a tribe that preserves its mystery even today. Picture the Great Bronze Age collapse on the Mediterranean coasts of the period, and imagine that you are a citizen of one of the superpowers located a little further inland. Egypt, Assyria, the Hittite Empire, the Minoan civilization, Babylon, you name it. One day when everything is normal, you see thousands of ships you have never seen before coming from the sea towards your shore. Tens of thousands of soldiers disembarking from the ships enter your city with their weapons and equipment made of iron, killing everyone they come across. They burn everything. They plunder all the cities, and in the end, they leave as they came, leaving only wreckage behind. This is an incredible event. Imagine that one day America and China, which we call today's superpowers, were attacked and torn apart by a community that no one even knew the name or language of. It's not something that could happen, right? But this happened across the entire Mediterranean region. In just 10 to 15 years, information that trouble had begun to emerge in the Mediterranean reached Egypt, but its seriousness was not understood. This happened during the reign of the legendary pharaoh Ramesses II, when ancient Egypt was at the peak of its power. Medinet Habu's reliefs and inscriptions tell us about the relentless struggle with this community that suddenly attacked the Egyptian coast, and that Ramesses III repelled them. Of course, this was not as easy as I said. In fact, as a result of the heavy wounds inflicted by this event, Egypt's new kingdom would collapse in the following years. Moreover, despite these wounds, Egypt was the luckiest among the civilizations of that period, because dozens of giant civilizations sprinkled on the coasts of Greece and Turkey had already been shattered into pieces. The end of maritime trade, the disintegration of land trade routes, the deterioration of public order due to the collapsed giant civilizations, and the fall of these civilizations. Due to the huge massacres, only ruins remained in the place of the greatest cities of the past. The great Hittite civilization was destroyed. Its archives were plundered and burned. The huge ancient Babylonian civilization was seriously shaken due to the severed ties and the wounds it received. The Mycenaean civilization, the Pearl of the Aegean, collapsed, and countless more city-states were destroyed. Today, historians say that this destruction was the greatest disaster in the history of the mankind. When all these attacks were over, and these tribes left again as mysteriously as they came, the wound suffered by humanity was so deep that famine broke out as agriculture and trade came to a halt. According to estimates, the famine lasted 300 years. The progress of art, science, and philosophy was lost. Even belief systems and written language disappeared in most places. Even its mechanics were destroyed. As a result of the trauma experienced after this incredible destruction, we see that monotheistic Abrahamic religions emerged in history. As a result, The members and defenders of the old faiths were largely destroyed. People remained silent in the face of this disaster and lost their faith in their gods. I always tell you that everything in history is interconnected. One person's disaster becomes another person's opportunity. Personally, as I told you in my videos, I'm someone who thinks that the books that are called sacred today were largely created by human intervention. Yes, in my opinion, the main backbone, such as the concepts of servitude, slavery, and the message of worshiping and believing in celestial beings, is much older, and its source is celestial. But I think that most of the things other than that are things that people added to books and religions based on very old texts. This incident is one of the best examples of this, and I think this destruction has found its place in the books very well. The concept of the two-horned one, metal, and the hero's struggle from previous civilizations is combined with the mysterious sea peoples and the incredible invasion and destruction they caused. You clearly see the story of al-Qarnayn and Gog and Magog. It is unclear where these people came from and where they went. The only thing they did was enter the cities with their incredible numbers, plunder all the resources, and leave death and debris behind. They did this all around the Mediterranean, and even from the coasts to the places inland. What would the people of thousands of years ago say to this? Or even those who called it the apocalypse? Rest assured, the books took these events and synthesized them into one story. And again, the same books warned us that such an attack would happen again at the end of time. It is not difficult to understand. Look at the event from their perspective. The super-advanced but pagan, polytheistic, perverted beliefs of the people before the Abrahamic religions were one day destroyed by a sudden, mysterious power. Do you think it is very difficult for the people of that period to add such a divine motif to this? In my opinion, it is an extremely simple result of human nature. Research conducted today, at least considering the incident within the framework of logic, claims that this incident was caused by a united tribe who were forced to migrate due to climate-related problems and to plunder other regions to survive. I don't know how right or wrong it is, but in my opinion, it's a bit of a weak and false theory. Because these people destroyed the military forces of the superpowers of the period. And they did this not once, not twice, many times against different civilizations. This is evidence of very serious military power. It is not possible for a civilian population to do this, which is what makes the incident incomprehensible. The biggest factor is exactly who the Sea Peoples were. Where did they come from? Where did they go? These still remain a mystery, but at least according to my analysis, this chain of events has taken its place in today's religions and is responsible for the shaping of the events of Gog and Magog. Of course, my personal analysis is a theory, because the occurrence of these events and the emergence of heavenly religions coincided in the same period. Besides, the narrative language and symbolism used also correlate with it. Who knows, maybe a historian will support this theory in the future. Whatever the event, the concept of the struggle of evil with good is one of the most fundamental points of religions and beliefs. This does not change whether it is the story of Gog and Magog or the story of Christ. How far does the basis of this phenomenon lie in the first place? This is a subject I'm currently working on, and I will share the video with you soon. I hope that one day we will find more detailed information about the Sea Peoples, because if these people were really people escaping from a climate disaster, doing this madness just to survive, then there is no need to look for Gog and Magog in the mysterious places of the world. Because as always, it turns out that the greatest danger facing humanity is ourselves. Moreover, a new climate crisis is affecting humanity. Thank you all for watching the video. You can support me to grow the channel by liking and commenting on the videos. Thank you all for your support. See you in the next video. Take care.